G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Here we are on Tuesday. Kenty, some big news coming up for you and Chimes. I'm going to talk about something on Thursday.
Yeah, look, obviously it's going to be a long season, and I think, if I give a hint away, it's probably the season's going to go a little bit longer for Chimes and I, but we'll talk about it Thursday and we'll see what the reception is. I'm looking forward to it, though.
Very good, very good. Mate, we'll start off with a little bit of news coming out from South Sydney that Latrell has been training at number 6.
Yeah, look, it's obviously Tuesday's team day, so each team puts out the team tonight, but the word is that Latrell obviously has been training at 5/8 for the Rabbitohs. They've used the opportunity, I think, to put him a bit closer, keep him out of the fullback position for one more week. I think it's a really, really nice decision, actually. Jaden Sullivan's probably going to be playing halfback because the Rabbitohs are busted in the halves. Jamie Humphries is out, probably out for a month. Cody Walker, we don't know, but won't be playing this weekend. So new halves pairing for the Rabbitohs, but the big news, Latrell Mitchell probably, look, I don't know if he'll be wearing 6 yet, but it sounds like he's been playing in 6.
You don't think it's a smoky with White and maybe going at 6? And
could be. The thing I like about that, Warren, is this, okay? So for 4 or 5 years now, we've heard nothing out of South Sydney except that Latrell Mitchell's a fullback, and that's all he'll be considered as. And even Wayne Bennett earlier this season came out and said, look, Trell is our fullback. Now, Jai Gray has come out and has put together a really blistering opening to the season.
Top of the Dally M's.
Top of the Dally M's. But the thing about that is, what this really reveals, it's a couple of things. One is the mastery of Bennett, who's been able to convince Latrell, for the good of the team, to come back last weekend in the centres and then this weekend play a little bit closer to the action at 5/8. Now, we all know he's capable of doing that, right? We all know he has sublime skills. He's one of the great players in the game at this time. And to shift to 5/8, it suits his skill set, so he can do that. But Latrell has stubbornly wanted to play fullback since his arrival at South Sydney, and no coach has dared really take him on. Wayne Bennett has come in, and it speaks to a couple of things. It speaks to Wayne Bennett's ability to get to the players and convince them to do what's best for the team. But it also speaks to, I think, of the alpha male that Latrell is at South Sydney. And part of Wayne's conjuring of all this is he's been able to get in Latrell's ear, make Latrell feel good, make him realise how much the team needs him, and make him realise it doesn't matter where he is, he's still going to be the go-to player, and he's going to be the guy that they really need to be firing. And Latrell, because he's that alpha guy, alpha males are generally protective men, okay? And what he's doing is he's looking after the team. He's doing what's best for the team. And it's a really, really positive sign out of South Sydney. I spoke yesterday about how after that game last week against the Roosters, Wayne Bennett, he found the soul of his team last week. He hadn't really established that in the first month of the competition. But what he's done is in that game he's found something. He's found their identity, he's found their character, and now it's up to him to just sit there and build it and polish it and get it right. But it is about Latrell. And what he's able to do now is say to Latrell, mate, we need you at 5/8. The boys need you at 5/8. Can you play 5/8 for me? And Latrell, because he's that character, he's answered the call. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a real sort of a step forward in maturity of that football team.
It's interesting, Bennett generally takes one or two players at each club he goes to, and he makes them, his project or his alpha, and those players thrive, and then as a result they put the team on their back and go for it, right?
Yeah, one thing about and his best teams have always had that guy, whether it was Alan Langer of all people at Brisbane when he had in all those glory years, and then Darren Lockyer after that. But what he's done here is he's appealed to Latrell's ego without making he's looking like he's appealing to his ego. He's just fed it. Bennett, the wolf at the door, that's the name of his biography, and it goes a little bit to the good wolf and the bad wolf are at the door. Which one do you feed? And the one you feed is the one you become. So you feed the good one. And it's similar to that with Latrell. He knows what Latrell responds to. He knows what he needs to hear. He knows what the team wants him to do. So Bennett just gets in his ear, mate. We can do this if you do this for us, and we're capable of this if you can do this. And Latrell's answered the call. I think it's a really positive sign for the growth of the club. And we've always questioned whether Latrell has the game at fullback. I don't believe that Latrell is primarily a fullback, to be honest. I know everyone talks about how good he can be at fullback, but defensively he gets caught short sometimes. He's been unfit in past seasons, and whenever there's been criticism of that, people will always go, "Yeah, but he's not that kind of fullback." Well, the absurdity of that comment is that is what the modern fullback is. I mean, like you can't be a modern front rower that doesn't want to do a hit up and then say, "Well, I'm just not that kind of front rower." You can't be a halfback and not run the football team and say, "Well, I'm just not that kind of halfback." Yeah, the fullback position has changed significantly in the last 15 years. Billy Slater changed the game at fullback, and it'll never go back that way to what it was before. You just need to be doing so much more now as a fullback. Latrell never quite got there because he never quite had the aerobic fitness to do that. So South Sydney's defence was always, but he's not that kind of fullback. Under Bennett, one of two things will happen. Either Latrell will get fit enough and become that fullback, which I tell you what, if he does, wait and see. But he will either do that, or he'll remain in the front line at either 5'8", not for a long time while he was with Cody there, but his career will outlast Cody, or at centre. And I think even at centre, though, he's still very, very dangerous. And he's still the guy in the team at centre that when the game is on the line, as it was last week, you want the ball in his hands.
Yeah, right. I think it's a really interesting weekend for Jayden Sullivan, right? He's going to be next to Latrell probably.
He's a perfect foil for Latrell, though, because he is an organising halfback. He's he gets in there and he has his little dip, but he doesn't. When I say he organises the game, but he's not. He never really comes forward as the dominant of the two halves. He it's kind of reverse. He plays the deputy role to whoever else is in the halves with him. That's sort of been the history of his career. So there's going to be no friction between him and Latrell this week. There's no doubt that if Latrell's on the left and Sullivan's on the right, and Sullivan's calling a ball, like a play, and then Latrell barks out what he wants, the ball's got to go left to Latrell. That's just the reality of it, and as it should, because Latrell's the guy, as I said, he's the game changer. But Sullivan suits him. Sullivan's the kind of halfback that suits him. The bloke you got to feel sorry for out of all this is poor old Lewis Dodd. Like, Lewis Dodd, he missed out the starting the season because he got suspended in the trial. So Jamie Humphries came through, started the season in superb form, really boxed the ears off his rivals throughout the first month of the competition, and then tore a hamstring last week. He's out, so Lewis Dodd finally gets his chance, but unfortunately for Lewis, he gets charged with a crusher tackle in State Cup, and he's out suspended this week. So that's why Jayden Sullivan's playing halfback, and this actually I think can be a really promising combination. Short term, of course, I don't think it's by any means it would be a long-term solution at the Rabbitohs. But short-term, I think it's a great halves pairing this week when they play the Cowboys over there in Perth. Yeah,
it'll be interesting over there in Perth. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Perth at the moment. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yeah, look, it sounds like it's dead over there as far as the Perth expansion plans. Anthony Albanese's over there as part of the election this week, and part of what I think it was all supposed to dovetail in. Albanese, rugby league fan, South Tragic, all that, we know all that, over there in Perth, and they were going to announce this week that the Bears were going to be the 18th team, the 19th team playing out of Perth for 2027. Irony being that they're coming in before PNG, but considered the 19th, not the 18th team. Yeah, right. But anyway, look, so that was going to happen this week, but that's all gone bad now. I don't know if they can save it, to be honest. Everything I'm hearing about it, it was part of the state election strategy over there where Cook, the Premier, was forced to come out and deny that. The NRL, I think, tried to do the right thing by him, But out of that, what ended up happening was he's distanced himself from that. And behind the scenes, there's been a lot of manoeuvring from AFL to really put pressure on the government and really raise criticism against the government about how much money, the taxpayer money they're spending, which has spooked the government over there and put the Bears off. I think the NRL plan was actually to go over there and initially have the government involved, but then as a partner with them, but then they were going to sell their share at the NRL. Obviously now that's all gone bad, so it won't be happening. So look, this week it's just a promotion now.
Right.
It's not a build up to the Bears coming in 2027. It's just a promotion. So South and the Cowboys play there this week. They get the leading game to that's going to be Manly Cronulla, which it should be a ripper game too. To be fair.
I feel for Big Papa Bear, Greg Florimo, poor bloke. He's been waiting a long time.
Look, he's been earning good money as the chief executive of a club that doesn't exist.
Very good.
No, I'm just joking. But yeah, look, I feel sorry for all the Bears. I caught up with Billy Moore last week in Sydney, and we sat down and just had a chat about it. And at that point, he was quite hopeful that it was all happening this week. And as the Bears were, sadly, I was the one that told him it probably wasn't going to happen. And it shattered poor old Billy. Like he was just devastated, and I think it's making the Bears now wonder where or if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, okay. Mate, bit of footy news, bit of team news. Luai back at the Tigers.
Yeah, Luai's back. Look, the Tigers. I like the Tigers. What I've seen out of this year. I don't think they're going to make the 8, but I do think they're a side you can definitely see improvement in the game. Now, Samuela Fa'inu is also coming back this week. He's a significant in as well. And there's no doubt the Tigers missed Luai last week. They got bashed up by the Broncos, but just offensively they just didn't look the same team. It just shows you how important Luai is in that team. So he's back this week, and he really just needs to keep himself on the paddock now because his contribution is significant. But the Tigers are looking good. I like what they're up to. I like the way they're playing their footy, and they're a chance this week.
It's all about halfbacks in the NRL, isn't it? Like you look at in the other teams, looks like Flano's going to stay with Lachlan Ilias.
Yeah, that's a funny one. So, again, Lachlan Ilias has come under some criticism for his performance last week. I don't think Shane Flanagan's got a lot of real options there. But the one thing that is really apparent about the Dragons at the moment is their lack of kicking game. Now, Lachlan Ilias can kick the ball. He's not a big kicker of the ball, but he did have a reasonable kicking game at South. I don't know whether the broken leg he suffered last year when he actually suffered the broken leg in the kicking motion when the ball was charged down and his shin broke, which I don't want to talk through that, but you can create your own sort of mental imagery there. But yeah, that they just don't have the kicking game, the Dragons. They can't get in front and protect the lead because the kicking game's not working for them. At Parramatta, against Parramatta last week, they really should have kicked their way to victory, I thought, but they were incapable of doing that. So that's a problem. But that's what happens when you're a sort of a bottom third club. You've got those problems. You've got to find solutions to it. But kicking game is so important in the game these days. It's underestimated by a lot of people, and the Dragons are struggling to find one.
Chad Townsend.
Well, again, as we record this, the teams haven't been announced, but he's under a lot of pressure to keep his spot. And Hugo Savala is looking. He's a monster halfback at the Roosters. He's 194 centimetres or something like that. So he's a big kid, but
good golfer too.
Good guy. Well, that's going to help his
Bonnie
footy.
Doon. Yeah, Bonnie Doon.
Yeah, look, Chad Townsend's got to try and find his groove a little bit at the Roosters. He's been brought in. They've had a little bit of disruption here and there, but the Roosters just aren't quite playing that Rooster football that they talk about. Sandon Smith's a good young kid, but he needs guidance. He needs someone to be leading, and this early in his progression, he needs that dominant halfback getting there. And again, Chad Townsend, his kicking game last week really let the Roosters down, put a couple out in the full, things like that. And from a player who's I think he's 34, who should be sitting there and they're the bread and butter things by that age. That's what he's at the club for. That's what he's got to really get going. And at the moment, it's not working. They look like they're going to drop Dom Young. Dom Young, you can see he's an Englishman the way he defends. He's got no idea about defence, the poor kid. It just makes Paul Reed's in defence. A couple of times he went for intercepts. Now, when he gets them, it looks outstanding.
Spectacular.
Yeah, but again, it cost him a game on the weekend. He went for an intercept, whereas if he just held off and stayed on his man, it would have been a simple tackle, set over, and off they go. Look, it can happen. Probably weak in reserve grade, playing State Cup. That won't do him any harm.
What about Dylan Edwards back potentially for the Panthers?
Potentially, yeah. Again, and look, even, I say this with players being named and not being named and all the rest of it. And again, the teams haven't been announced yet. But Dylan Edwards is not far away, but I tell you what, Penrith need him. They are a different side at the moment. And it's a really interesting discussion with the Panthers, whether they have passed the tipping point.
Yeah, right.
And I don't want to get into this cliche chat that everybody gets into. Oh, we say this every year. I haven't been saying it every year about the Panthers. I think every year they have still had that core group of players who have been good enough to win. But, Byron, what happens after a while is if you lose too many players, you fall out of your systems a bit. Because if Ivan Cleary goes back and he picked that over the last 5 years, picked his 5 grand final teams and put the best team together, it's a pretty impressive team, naturally, okay? But as you lose as one, you bring one guy in. Well, you can replace that one because that one guy is going to have a dozen players around him who can put him where he needs to be, tell him what he needs to do. If he loses 2, you can do that. If he loses 3, you can probably do that. And over the years that Penrith have done that and been able to train up the guys who've filled those spots. But what's happening is the rate of losing players against the rate of being able to train them up to where they need to be is distancing itself. It's getting further apart from each other. And what we've seen already in these early rounds, and it was even there with that Nathan Cleary there last week, they didn't stick to that Penrith football that wins them games. They didn't stay to their game plan. They got out of shape at different times, tried stuff at different times. Some of the mistakes they made were very basic, just stuff that Penrith don't do. And I respect the fact that Ivan Cleary's come out and said, we're in uncharted waters and he's got to coach his way out of this because he really does have to. But I do think they've sort of gone past that tipping point where the players coming into the side, there's not enough other players, core players who have been there long enough to be able to help coach them on the field to what they need to do. So out of that, what's happening is they are falling out of shape. They're making these errors. And as good as Nathan is, I know Andrew Johns this week has come out and said he needs to dumb down his footy. I think that's a really good assessment. Andrew Johns' ability to just sit down and analyse teams and identify their problems and then straight out just really make it simple about what needs to be fixed. That's what made Andrew Johns such a great player. And I think that's spot on with Penrith. Nathan Cleary is playing a game of footy that some of the other kids in that team are incapable of actually identifying. They can't get what he's trying to do. They don't understand it. And they lose their discipline and their patience and they just do what they think they need to do or they've been brought up doing, not knowing that Nathan just wants them to keep doing what he's asking them to do to get the win and to play the footy they need to play. So he probably does need to do that. But they're going to be a fascinating watch for the rest of the season, the Panthers. Well,
the other thing is now teams are picking off their reserve graders as well. So when the first graders get injured, their reserve graders come in, they're not there like they were.
Well, Wayne Bennett, again, I don't want to sound like this is a Wayne-a-thon, but Wayne Bennett actually was the one that he got ahead of the curve with the Panthers 5 years ago when he signed Katoa at the Dolphins. And so Katoa was always there, earmarked as a guy to replace Luai because they knew that they were going to lose him at some point. Luai was too good a player not to get offered marquee money by some club. That eventually happened. Tigers came in, they offered him marquee money, and off he went. But the Panthers, their succession planning was they'd had Katoa coming up behind him ready to go. So by the time Luai went, and he probably would have gone a year or two, maybe a year earlier if it hadn't happened with Katoa. But they had him set there ready to go. So once Luai was gone, Katoa would have come in, played 4 or 5 years himself at the Panthers before maybe he then would take marquee money to move on or something like that. But Bennett saw that, identified it, and came in and at the time offered for a lot of people what was ridiculous money to get Katoa as basically a reserve grader to go to the Dolphins. But Bennett had recognised that this is what Penrith were doing, recognised that this kid was going to be a very good player. So he got ahead of him before Penrith really were able to afford to keep him at the club, because they still want to get a couple more years out of Luai before they let him go. So that's what's happened. And now a few other clubs have done that with other players. So if they've had players ready, identified, okay, this guy, he's going to replace Kickow when he goes, but suddenly they lose him. Fisher Harris surprised them when he left. They hadn't really planned to have a front row to come in after him, because he came through with this out of the blue offer to go back to the Warriors. So they've been credited rightfully with being really, really clever with how they've planned to replace players. But the last couple of years, for various reasons, it's cost them because ultimately their success has been so good that you'd be mad if you weren't looking at Penrith to find good players.
What do you think's happened with Blaise Talangi there? Well, why hasn't he been chosen?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But look, I think Cole, when he first came through, was the guy that, I don't think they'd anticipated him to take the job. But I think when he did it, he just played such a solid game. Talangi's still young, and he's still got a little bit of that game breaker in him. He's a little bit of, I don't want to say he's rocks and diamonds. He's better than that, okay? But he's also a guy that every now and then's got just a little bit of an error in him. It's that youthful error that they can make. Yeah. Whereas Cole played a more solid game, I think just sort of fitted the Penrith style better. So he got the jump. He played so well when he did get the opportunity that, and Ivan basically came out and said, look, he's taking the opportunity that we gave him, so we're going to start with him. So I don't think there's anything wrong with Talangi, other than rather it was more that Jack Cole came out and just put some games together that Penrith thought they needed. But I think as the injuries have hit the club and suspensions and all the rest of it, that they've suffered a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think next week or this week is quarter way through the season, right? And
yeah, round 6. They play. It's not quite. It's a 27-round season, but each team only plays 24 games. So, from a game point of view, some of them will be a quarter way through. But to be a quarter way through and to be sitting where they're at, Penrith, I tell you what, it's you do get to a stage in the NRL where suddenly you look up and it's just too far. The 8th spot is too far away.
Yep.
Now, what you do is you look at the top 8 and you look at the ladder and you'll go, well, hang on, we're only 6 points behind. So you think that's not too bad. But then what starts to happen is, okay, we might be 6 points behind, but there's 5 teams between us and 8th. And so to get to that 8th spot, you've got to go on a run where you basically go past all those teams, which they don't want to allow you to do. And it's actually pretty tough to do. Like, it's because by nature, 8th spot, you get there, win 12, lose 12 through the season, will get you into 8th position or thereabouts. Sometimes you'll finish 9th on for and against. Sometimes you might finish 7th on for and against. But generally, win 12, lose 12 will get you 8th spot. Now, if you're a team and you're sitting there at 1-4 or 1-5, and you sit there and go, we can still make 8, you're already starting 4 games behind that 50-50. That even split that you need to be. So that's the difficulty of it, because you need to go on, very few teams are going on a 5-game winning streak in that position down low. They can do it, but that's the difficulty of it.
At the start of the season, it was really Melbourne Penrith, but Penrith now appear so far behind Melbourne. Can anyone beat Melbourne?
Yeah, they can, because I don't think Melbourne are quite there yet, but Melbourne are doing what they always do. They come out, they just play consistently well. But Melbourne aren't at their best yet. I think they will be at some point. Melbourne just need to be healthy. That's all. But they are. You can almost pencil them in now as one of the grand final teams. The rest of the competition is wide open, though. Penrith have fallen away. Cronulla have been there or thereabouts, but they haven't started spectacularly well. Canterbury, obviously, the last 3 years, and it's been I think it was Penrith, Brisbane. Started the season 5-0.
21, 22, 23, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was the last 3 seasons, but the team that started one team started each season 5-0, and all 3 of those teams, 2 of them being Penrith, the other was Brisbane, have made the grand final. So Bulldogs fans might have something to be excited about.
Get your tickets, Doggies fans.
Well, look, and they play a tremendous game. The thing I love about Canterbury is when you watch them play. And this I don't want to sound dicky about this, but they look like footballers playing football, as opposed to some teams you look at and it's like they're athletes who you're trying to teach to play football. Some teams are like got big blokes who are 6'2", 6'3", 105 kilos, run 100 in even time, but you can't read 2-on-1 with the in attack. You know what I mean? Things like that. They make some basic errors there, and throughout the game at the moment, I think every club's got a few players who are tremendous athletes, but don't really have any great footy nous. Whereas the Penrith guys, they make smart football decisions almost all the time.
Canterbury guys? Penrith.
The Canterbury guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, make smart football decisions almost every time. And I mean things as simple as just diving on a loose ball sometimes. Some teams you sit there and the ball will go to ground and some guy will pick it up and try to run 70 metres with it, knock it on. And if it's a knockback ball, so the opposition, if the team is defending against knocks the ball back, he picks it up to try and go and knocks it on. So suddenly they've got to do 6 more tackles. The Bulldogs just make smart options. They take smart options all the time. They play clever football. They seem to know what percentage footy was.
So, mate, who gets the credit for that? Is it? I know.
I think that's Serraldo. Yeah,
it's not the great Gus choosing those players.
No. I think it's Serraldo. Just gives them a comprehensive education. You know, that's one of the things. I don't quite know this about the game because you hear about how hard they train and all the rest of it. I don't think they train as hard as what we've seen. Say, like I remember reading a story about Tom Brady after they lost the Super Bowl. Now, you talk to footy players, they'll lose a grand final and they'll say, mate, I haven't watched the game back. Tom Brady, when he lost the Super Bowl, went in the week after the season was over and for the next however many weeks it took, went through and watched every play that he was involved in every game twice. To see what he did right, what he did wrong, and what he could improve on, and whether there was any patterns of bad behaviour or forming in his game. And he sat there for hours and hours and hours on his own.
While everybody else is on holidays on a beach.
And you talk to players these days, and I've asked coaches before and why players don't do that sort of stuff and do that extensive video. Now, they do a fair bit, to be fair. But I asked them about that, why they do it, and the answer is always, mate, they've got to get some rest. That's the answer. They've got to get some rest. I think the Penrith guys are just really well educated on
Canterbury.
The Canterbury. I keep saying Penrith.
You're right.
The Canterbury guys keep saying are really well educated on just that simple stuff. Just I saw a couple. I've said a couple of times in the past few weeks, teams have made breaks. Players have had a 2-on-1 and passed the ball too early. Jerome Buller, who's a really, really good player, did that last week against the Broncos. He made a break. He was running. He had, I think it was the River outside him on the wing, and he got to Reece Walsh, but passed far too early. And Walsh just drifted off him and went for the winger, who scored the try in the corner. But it would have been much, much easier if he'd held the ball for probably 2 more steps and even changed angle to sort of take the pace off Reece Walsh. Just had like a step or two infield to take the pace off Reece Walsh, so then he couldn't then transition on to the winger in the corner, which is what he did. And you see a lot of that get made these days. Now, I know that Jerome Buller's a very, very good player. He's going to be very, very good. He's going to get better. But I think back in the day, these were things you just picked up in the backyard playing footy.
Yeah, not enough backyard footy.
Yeah.
Frustrates old blokes like you.
Yeah, it does. It does. Because, look, because right now, they go on this career path from the time they're 14 or 15. And they're almost taught not to play backyard footy and go down the park and have a kick around with their mates after school and all that, because they're already trained to become NRL players and they don't want to go. Last thing you want to do is go down there and do an ACL, for example. So they don't do that sort of stuff. But there's also a lot of, you just learn things in that sort of game. Yeah, the greatness of Alan Langer and Kevy Walters was every day after school they played. They lived in the same street.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? They lived in the same street, and Kevy's got, I think he's got 3 brothers, and then Alfie had, I think, 2 or 3 brothers, and there's a couple other kids in the neighbourhood. Imagine watching that for a backyard game of footy. The Walters clan against the Langer clan, and off they went. But what they learned was the unorthodox things.
Well, that's what they say about Sammy Walker too, right? Grew up with
Yeah.
his dads and his uncles.
Yeah.
Plays unorthodox.
Plays that style of footy, and they teach that, and a lot of that's backyard footy. They actually, a lot of their training they used to do. The fascination about the Walkers and Sam Walker is when they were coaching Ipswich, and Sam was only a kid at the time, but Sam used to come to training with them all the time. They replicated their backyard footy to the point that they recreated their backyard. So they had a tree here. They put a fake tree here. Like there's a tree here.
Not your tree.
Yeah, not my tree. Not my tree. No, but they put that sort of things. They put that into their game, just to try and get these guys out of this familiarity and this systematic style of training that they'd all learned. That you do this because every other team's doing this. And they taught them to start thinking a little bit of it in an unorthodox way. Just okay, let's just sort of lateral thinking here. What's the way? How do we get out of this situation? And it caused all sorts of benefits for Ipswich at the time. They won the grand final there one year when they had the lowest salary cap in the competition. Amazes me they don't get a start as NRL coaches here. It's because clubs just don't have the courage to do it.
Risk adverse, right? Risk adverse.
That's exactly it. But I think that we need more in the game. Backyard footy, more of it.
Yeah, you speak about Sam Walker. I heard a story, and we've got to wrap up here, but I heard a story when he was looking for his club. He came down and looked at 7 clubs in Sydney and Brisbane, and his research was meticulous, and his footy brain was next level, and that's why he was prepared to go to that many clubs.
Yeah, and I love that. I really admire that about him. I love the whole Walker approach to rugby league. I think it's fascinating. It really interests me. I think it's brave. I'd love a club to take the chance to take him on. They've even offered to coach an NRL team when coaches have been sacked. They've said, we'll do the rest of the season for you for nothing. And teams are still, to your point, risk adverse, won't take them on.
Mate, another great episode. We had some Ask Kentys. We'll make sure we get to those tomorrow. And thanks, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.